All right, I'm outside. I want to test this out tonight. Right now it says 32. I don't know if you can see that. That's what that says. We're supposed to get down to apparently 25. And what do I have on? I got a pair of long johns, long john shirt, light jacket, pair of nylon pants, darn tough socks, pair of gloves, hat. I have the NEMO pad, and I have my other pad that I take on the bottom of my pack. That pad's got like an R value too. My NEMO pad's good to 0, which is what we're at now, 32 Fahrenheit. And I feel no coldness coming through the pad at all. The tips of my fingers are a bit cold, but that's because they're outside. Once they're under the comforter, well, the quilt, they'll be fine. My quilt is good for 0 Fahrenheit, or sorry, 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit is what my quilt is good for. And it's kind of the setup there. No tent, strictly outside. I got a cat over here bothering me. I just hope you don't pee on my thing. Yes. Yes, you. What? I brought a light outside so you guys can actually see. You can see how cold it is. Striper, what do you want? What do you want? Yes. Do you want to crawl underneath inside with me? It should be warm enough down to 25. Now next week we're supposed to go into the single digits, like down to 9 Fahrenheit. So that'll be interesting. I might have to use my other pad, but I will try it with this pad and see how far down I can get. But this is normally what I do. Now people say, other preppers I've seen say you need a fire. You don't need a fire. It'll give away your position. You want to have the proper gear. And I can't stress enough how important a pad is. The higher the R value of the pad, the less cold you're going to be. And it's the same thing in a hammock. Everybody always thought it's the cover you put on. But it's not the cover you put on. It's actually the quilt that goes under the hammock. So, will you stop getting here beside my head? Huh? So we should be able to get pretty low, but the pad means everything. You can actually, and I think you can. I've taken it down lower, but you know, everything in time deteriorates. Even your quilt deteriorates. Like when I pack away my quilt, it has to be put in a pillowcase. You can't leave it crunched up because it actually deteriorates the actual down blanket. So you really have to take care of them. And, you know, over time you deteriorate and then you need a new one. I've had this one like 5 years, so it seems to be okay. But we'll see if the pad's good or if the quilt's good. Like right now, the pad is fine. Perfectly fine. My quilt, I don't know, it seems like it's at the edge. I feel a little chill on my knee right now. That's about it. But if we get down to 25, which is another 5 degrees, which is where we're supposed to be, maybe this quilt won't do it. Maybe I need to double up on it. And I always tell you guys, go out in your backyard and test your stuff. If you get a little bit cold or it don't seem right, get your butt back in the house. And so I'm a little cold around the knees. I can feel it. So I'm going to have to fluff my quilt up a little bit better. But if you really want to do winter camping and you want to endure what's going on out here and how cold it is, you also find you'll sleep good. You'll sleep really deep. But make sure you're not cold at all. This pad has been my go-to pad forever. It does everything. Now I do have a pad that goes colder down to R8. I believe this is an R6. Is what it is. So, and my fingers are cold. So I guess I'm going to need a different pair of gloves maybe. maybe a full face glove. And right now it's, well, it's 11 o'clock at night right now. So I'm going to run this for a bit, and we'll see how it does. Okay, once you're outside for 1 hour, check. Once you're outside for 1 hour, you need to do a check. So I had my son come out after an hour to check on me. I was sleeping. You want to check your body for cold spots. Now, what I've done here is the finger gloves, they were no good. My hands were extremely cold. See, what happens is your body, your hands will get cold, your feet will get cold. It starts pulling heat to your chest. So I didn't have cold feet, but I had cold hands. So when I threw an extra pair of socks over top of my hands, I was warm again. And I always take at least 2 or 3 pairs of socks with me when I'm out there. But I was getting cold a little bit on the knee, and I rolled over my back, and then the coldness went away. Always keeping a little bit of a layer. You can't have the quilt pressing tight up against you, or else those parts will get cold. Now, apparently the temperature in the house says 23 Fahrenheit, where out here it says 27. So it's probably closer down to 23, 25, because that's what they said. This thermometer thing I got isn't the greatest. But if you can see the steam, you can see how cold it is. Now, I would say with this setup that I've got right here, I'm pretty much at my limit. If it goes any a little bit colder, I'll probably be a little bit chilly. But I could make it through the night pretty easy. Now, when we get down in the single digits next week, I don't think this will hold up. Now, I do have an extra quilt for summertime. It's possible if I double up with my quilts, I could make it down to the 9 degree. 9 degree Fahrenheit. I'll have to try it and see. But this system here is good to 25, maybe even 20. And I'm not cold at all with the pad. The NEMO insulated pad is what I'm running here. And then I've got that extra gray pad underneath it. So I'm probably sitting about an R7 in the way of the pad itself. And in my quilt's only, 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit type of quilt. It's not a quilt to hit low temperatures, but it's doing very well. Now you have to understand that you can also layer your clothing, where right now I'm only running a pair of long johns and a pair of nylon pants on top, and pair of long johns shirt with a little light job. I'm not even wearing anything that really keeps you warm. And I did that on purpose because I tend to go pretty light with my clothing. So if I get down to 9 like next week, I might have to layer up my clothes a little bit better. But overall, it's pretty good. And no fire is needed. Don't put your head under the sleeping bag like I've told people I don't know how many times. You see all that smoke coming out of my mouth. That's water. I mean, you don't want to be sticking your head underneath your quilt and then making everything wet underneath you, or you're just going to make yourself cold. That is very important. You want that away from your sleeping bag, that steam. And like I tell you guys, get out and test it. And the proper way to test it is set yourself up and wait 1 hour, have somebody come out in case you fall asleep and wake you up and see if you have any cold spots. Is your knees cold? Is your butt cold? Are your hands cold? And don't play like a statue. Like, don't lay there on your pad like you're afraid to move. I mean, don't be doing that. If you feel a cold spot, turn yourself on your back for a bit and look at the beautiful stars and think about what's going on with your body, and then move back to your side. But don't make yourself a statue is what you're doing. And next time around, I suppose you could do another 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, and then get woke up. It's hard on the guy that's coming out to check on you, but it's the only way to make sure that everything's going to do what it's going to do. I know for a fact the system's good now, and it'll be just fine. And you will too with more experience as you get. But you can't be afraid to go outside and try it in your yard. I mean, after all, it's only what, 5 or 10 steps? It's not that far to go to test out your gear. And that's all it takes. And right now it's around, well, we're around midnight right now. The morning's the coldest, usually 3, 4 a.m. That's usually when it's the coldest. And then by 9 or 10 is when it starts to warm up, is what it does. So the system I got, I would say it's good to about 20 Fahrenheit. I wouldn't really want to push it past that. And maybe I got to double up my quilts, double up my clothes. I won't know until we get down next week down to 9. But I'll have it all ready to go and test it and see. Now, we don't get any colder than that. The coldest I've ever seen it here in Tennessee is, maybe 7 Fahrenheit is what we've gotten. But you also understand about Tennessee is we'll get cold for 2 or 3 days, and then we're right back up in the 50s again, 50 Fahrenheit. It'll go like that for a week, and then we'll go back down into the 30s. But it's very rare we get down to single digits here in Tennessee. There's apparently a cold vortex that's coming through, and that's why everything's getting so cold. So people that are up in Minnesota or up in your colder climates, they're really getting hit hard. And this system I've got set up, it wouldn't work for up there. There's no way. You would have to really look into an R8 type of pad. Like I do have one of those. And you probably have to look into double quilting or a sleeping bag and a quilt. I mean, you'd have to double up on what you're going on it. And again, we have to consider weight. We have to consider bulk. We have to consider this when we put all this in our pack, right? I know Shug, when he runs his hammock in -40, he runs 2 quilts on top and 2 quilts on the bottom. So he's literally using 4 quilts. And you figure one of my quilts is just a bit over a pound. So now this setup right here down to 20 Fahrenheit or so. You figure the pad's just a little over a pound. The quilt's a little over a pound. My other pad's a little bit. So literally this is a complete 3-pound system where it's good to 25 Fahrenheit is what this is. So if I add another quilt, I'm into a 4-pound system. And so I'm still under 5 pounds just for me having a complete system. Now there's no tent. Don't need a tent. I mean, if it's not raining, why set up a tent? I mean, when you get this cold, there ain't no bugs, there ain't nothing out. Nothing whatsoever. If you were to set up anything, if it was windy, and it's not windy, but if it was windy, maybe a tarp. I mean, instead of a tent, just to cut the wind so it doesn't hit you so hard. And setup is also important. I mean, if it's windy, you don't want to be camping on top of a mountain where it's windy, because now you got the wind chill, right? You got to consider that. So all that has to be taken care of. But at 25 Fahrenheit, maybe even down to 20, no wind, and this system works pretty good. It's a 3-pound system. So when I do get down to single digits next week, I'll come out again and I'll try it with this pad and see how it does. And I'll try it with a double quilt and see how it does. But if not, I'll try my other pad and see how it does. Or maybe I'll need all 3. I mean, maybe that'll take me down to the 6 Fahrenheit. So we'll try that out. So this was a pretty good success. I know it'll take me down to 25, maybe 20 Fahrenheit. And that tells me where the limitations are with this setup. So that's why you get out in your backyard test your stuff, and find out how low you can go and where you're living. Now, if I just, let's say I'm out and I go below the 20 Fahrenheit, okay, I'm probably going to be shivering. Um, I might have to put on every piece of clothing I got just to layer up, and maybe that'll make a difference. But you have to consider that when you're packing your pack and what you're taking. That's why a lot of people take puffy jackets, and they spend, $300-400 on a puffy jacket. As you can see, when you get into wintertime, it gets expensive. And it's just the way it is. Now, if you're a bigger guy, trying to find a puffy jacket's hard. Most of them will go to a 2X, is what they'll do. They won't go as far as 3X or 4X. They won't do it. If you look on hunting sites like Hue and some of those other ones, you will find the larger sizes, but you're going to pay a higher amount. Like Huey, I think their cheapest puffy jacket is like 300. They do offer other winter jackets for colder weather, and they're like $600, $700, but those would be used if you're in Minnesota. Um, your super colder climates is what those would be used for. And they would keep you extremely warm. But if you're a bigger guy, you might want to check the hunting sites for the bigger clothing, basically, and the warmer clothing. But I have very light clothing on, and this has held up quite well. So when we go down to the single digits, I'll check that out, and we'll see how that is. And you only have to go up for 1 or 2 hours to test it. You don't have to be out there all night. I mean, you'll know within an hour if you've got cold spots, if you feel it coming through your mat, and you'll know what's going on when you test it out. There's no cold coming through this mat at all. Nothing. I don't have one spot of cold, and that's comfortable. But it is cold out here. Oh boy, it's cold. I mean, my son says 23 Fahrenheit is what the thermometers say inside the house, so it is cold. And when you start removing the sleeping bag, in my case, the quilt, from my body, you can feel my arms, my hands. It gets cold pretty quick. But as long as you're underneath there, then it keeps you pretty warm. So this was a success, and I guess next week when it gets down to 6, we'll test it again and see what I got to do. Do I need a double quilt? Do I need triple pads? We're going to find out, and I'll test it then. So you guys getting out testing it? It's a good time to do it. I'll catch you guys on the next one.